Hello students, today our target is convert improper fractions to mixed numbers and vice versa. So we'll go back and forth between converting improper fractions to mixed numbers and then mixed numbers into improper fractions. You see the W in the corner, which stands for right, so please go ahead and pause the video and write that target into your notes. Okay, we're going to have another W up in here. So you can pause the video and write the notes now or listen to it first, any which way you prefer. But let me explain what we're looking at here. Okay, I'm going to skip down to the first point. When we have fractions between 0 and 1, we will notice the numerator is less than the denominator. So the examples we have there, 1/4, 1/2 or 1 out of 2, 3/4. Okay, and that is between 0 and 1, and you'll notice the numerator of those fractions is less than the denominator. Conversely, if you skip down to our last point here, fractions greater than 1, you'll have the numerator greater than the denominator. Now if you look up at our examples on the number line, we're looking between 1 and 2, and some examples of fractions, 5/4, 5/4, 6/4, 7/4, and 8/4, which makes 2. Remember last time we said that fraction bar can also be read as a division sign, and we know 8 divided by 4 would get us 2. And finally, for the slide, if we have 1 or 1 whole, the numerator and denominator will be equal. So if you look up top again to our number line, 4/4 is 1 whole thing, or we could say 4 divided by 4 is 1. Okay, and that 4 could be any number really. If it's the same top and bottom, it would be 5/5, 6/6, a million out of a million. You're still going to get 1. That number, whether it's 4 or 5, a million, depends on how many parts you divide the whole into. Here, I just divided into 4 parts, 1/4, 2/4, 3/4, and then 4/4. So that's why we use 4 in this case. Make sure you take these notes, pause whatever you got to do, and then move on. Okay, more notes, little W in the corner. So we want to define a proper fraction. Simply put, that is when the numerator is less than denominator. An example, 3/4. And there's a picture of what it might look like, 3 parts shaded in out of a whole thing that's been divided into 4 parts. Conversely, an improper fraction, notice the prefix im, which means not, so a not proper fraction is when the numerator is greater than the denominator. Our example is 6/4. And the picture is 6 parts out of 4 shaded in. So make sure we have this in our notes. Okay, another definition, another thing to write down. A mixed number is a combination of a whole number and a fraction. So one example is 1 and 1/4. So we want to read this with the word "and" in between. We'll talk more about that later. But 1 and 1/4, the picture of what it looks like is to its right. Here's 1 whole thing, right? It's all shaded in. And then 1/4, that's the picture of 1 and 1/4. And that is equivalent to 5/4, as you see at the bottom here. Okay, so that's our improper fraction. And just like the previous slide with the picture of 6/4, now we have 5/4. The picture is right above it. We have 5 parts shaded in out of things that are divided into 4 parts, as our denominator shows. More notes, more notes. We want to talk about how do we change improper fractions to mixed numbers. Generally, when you see a numerator that's larger than the denominator, you do not want to leave it like that. Sometimes it will create a whole number by itself, like you saw if we go back to our notes with 8/4, okay? 2 divides perfectly into that, 2 4s, so you don't have a fraction left over. Okay, previously, maybe second, third, fourth grade, the fraction left over we would call just a remainder, and we would leave just r as our remainder. Okay, this has no remainder. Nowadays, our remainder is going to become a fraction or a part of a whole. Okay, so an example here, we want to make sure we take down our notes, 7/4, improper fraction, and we want to change it into a mixed number, and we do that simply by this step here. We divide our numerator by the denominator. Again, that fraction bar means divide by. So 7 divided by 4, okay? And if you struggle with division, you can just think with that little note we have, how many 4s fit into 7? Well, if we're counting by 4s, we can only get 1 4 to get to 7 because 2 4s go over. 2 4s make 8. So we have our 1 4 here. 1 whole 4 makes 7. And on our remainder, this little note I wrote here, what remainders? Our remainder is going to go up top in the numerator part of the fraction. Okay, I said that a little confusing. So you have 1 whole 4 that goes into 7. And there are 3 left over. In other words, if you do 7 minus 4, you get 3. This bottom part of the fraction, the denominator, will always be the original denominator. So 1 whole, we can almost write the denominator first because we know it'll always be 4 in this particular case. And 3 is just like the leftovers, okay? It's 7 minus 4 because only 1 4 fit in there with 3 left over. And this is what we just talked about. So please go ahead and take this in your notes as well. Pause the video, whatever you got to do. Our steps to, if you want to write here, we're changing improper fractions. Excuse me as I run out of room here. I'll just do one of these. To mixed, or sometimes whole numbers, but for our case today we'll do mixed numbers. Okay, so the first step, we divide the numerator by the denominator. That gets you your whole number part of the mixed number. The remainder becomes the numerator, and we keep our original denominator that we started with. So make sure we have these notes. And we'll do one more practice problem with these exact steps. Let's look at this improper fraction, 16/7, or we could say 16/7 if you want, I guess, 16 divided by 7. Okay, so we just want to ask ourselves how many 7s fit into 16. Well, if we count by 7s, 7, 14, 21. 21's over, so we want to make sure we stop at 14. And 14 is 2 7s. Okay. Now if you want to show the work, our remainder up here will become our numerator. Now we might as well just start with our denominator because we know it'll be 7 because it was originally 7. That will not change. Okay. And our numerator is simply based on the difference between our original numerator and, I guess you could say, whatever remainder. When you have 2 7s that go into 16, that 2 7s makes 14. So the difference between 16 and 14 would be 2. That 2 becomes our numerator of the mixed number. So 16/7 is the same thing as 2 and 2 7s. Okay, let's move on to our independent work.